Welcome back to Main Station. So today I'm going to talk about the S&P, Dow Jones, and Nasdaq. And yeah, to get started, well, as you might know, we had this consolidation right here after breaking this ascending wedge, or this rising wedge, which we had right here. And I'm going to be looking at the Dow Jones and the Nasdaq at very similar patterns. So don't be too surprised if we see very similar price action. And yeah, so well, we had this some sort of descending triangle on the top, so this would be an indication that we see further downside since this is a bearish pattern. You could have looked at it as a descending channel, and then you would have said maybe we will look for more upside. But also, since we had this gap to the upside, you could have expected that we could see an island right here, which we are now have seen, and it's similar to the island we had right here. But this isn't too nice since, as you can see, these gaps are much more even than we had them right here. So well, it is a lower high compared to this one right here, technically, but in my opinion this more looks like a double top, since there are a few cents, like 15 cents, 20 cents between these two highs. So in my opinion this is more of a double top than anything else, and we have now dropped quite nicely from these highs right here. And this is the S&P, as you can see. So now we are holding on these moving averages on the 200, and further on previous support. Now what I would think would be likely to happen next is there are a couple of scenarios, and the bullish scenario would be that if we go to the hourly, then that we would see a high, technically a lower high, but you could expect maybe if we draw a line right here, that we now see or we've seen a low, and we would now see a higher low, and this would be an higher low, and after that see continuous higher lows and maybe even two lower highs. So we would then be in an ascending triangle, and this would be bullish since price hits this top line multiple times, and this would be an indication that we see further upside and break upwards. But well, this is a scenario, but what I think is more likely, or what could be more likely, I'm not quite sure. I'm quite neutral at this point, since well, we had a nice run over, made over 50% of our gains back, which we lost. So this is significant, and there's no doubt about that. Well, and this is one point. If you go back to the 15-minute, then we can see we're now seeing an equilibrium on the 50-minute, on the 5-minute, and so forth time frame on the S&P and also on the Dow Jones. If you go here to the 50-minute, and just the same on the Nasdaq, of course, right here. So very similar patterns, of course, since these are all traded in the United States. And as you can see, this is actually a lower high and not really a double top on the Nasdaq, since there's almost $1 between them. So this is more significant than on SPY also. And this is interesting. On the Dow Jones, we have actually seen a higher high than previous, so this has been more bullish than the other two. But, and this is a big but, I will go into depth why I think the Dow Jones might be actually a bit more bearish now than it was compared to the other two. Well, but then, as I said, we dropped now, and we are seeing now a consolidation pattern, and usually this would be a triangle, since this is most likely an equilibrium with lower highs and higher lows. So this would be a pendant now forming, and after that we could see a continuation and a further downside, And if we see further downside, then I think, or I would like it to break these lows right here, 260, and then this would be another percent drop from here, a bit more like a 1.5% drop. So we would then be over just a bit over 2% drop, and this would be a nice indication that we see further downside in the future and actually play out a prolonged equilibrium on the 4-hour time frame. So if you now go to the hourly time frame on the S&P, then we can see we made almost a double top, but on the RSI we are actually quite diverging, and this is also on the Dow Jones, so this is interesting. So as you can see, we have made significant lower highs on the RSI. This is around 80, and this is around 64, like between 18 points on the RSI. So this is quite significant, since this is basically a double top. And now since this would be a higher low right here on the RSI, it's actually a triple bottom. So this is also quite bearish. You can see the RSI is basically now forming a descending triangle. And since this resembles the strength in the market, you want to include this in your analysis, since this can be an indication that even if price moves a certain way, that actually the drivers behind the price will end up in another direction. So this is interesting, and would be a bearish indication that we see further downside. If you see further downside, then I would like it to break these lows right here, around 260. And if this breaks, then also I would like to move beyond this box and move back down to these lows. And this would be my latest point of support, actually around 2580, where we see where we see some support, and it would be like between or in this range, just above this trend line, and yeah, in this cluster of support right here. So as I mentioned also in an earlier video I did, this was a cluster of resistance, and this of course is a cluster of support. So basically, it's not really surprising that we see price move the way it does, basically choppy up and down, and a continuation or a consolidation phase. So this is not too surprising in any way. And yeah, so what I wanted to mention on the Dow Jones is that you can see we actually broke to a high by quite a few points. This is 24762. This is 280, around 100 points. So this is quite significant. And but on the RSI, we can see we diverge also, just the same we did. And if we go to the 4-hour, then it gets a bit more. It doesn't. Well, yeah, too. You can see we broke higher, but we are actually lower on the RSI. And compared to these lows, this would also be a higher low. But on the RSI, it's basically a lower low. So also this could now be some sort of a bear flag on the top right here. If I remove these moving averages, then it would be like this. Bear flag on the top. And then we see a drop to the downside, and yeah, we are consolidating also on the Dow Jones, of course. So I actually would like to see it break even today, and if not, then maybe tomorrow. See this consolidation more prolonged, and maybe even break a little bit above, and then see maybe a bear flag of the a bear flag being made out of this pennant, which we're forming now right here on the 15-minute and the 5-minute time frame. So yeah, in my opinion, we are now looking for further downside on the Dow Jones and the S&P. And if we go to the 4-hour again, then if I activate my moving averages, my exponential moving averages, then you can see the 204-hour moving average is still acting as resistance. We broke above it quite a few times, but we always broke lower, and on the daily, just the same as you can see, still acting as resistance right now. And I think on the weekly it's also quite interesting. No, that's my bad. But on the S&P, sorry, I didn't. I think, or this was Bitcoin. Wait, I clicked on the wrong thing, and now my computer is freezing. Well, this is not what I wanted. Well, I just moved to a SPY on this one. Yeah, on the S&P, you can see the 200 MA still acting as resistance. So even if we break up, then we still have quite a lot of resistance incoming. Also on the 4 hour, it gets quite nice actually. You can see we broke above the 204 hour exponential moving average quite a few times, but we always broke lower. But what is important is that you can see we always broke below it quite rapidly, but now we are actually coiling between these moving averages, the 12, 26, and 50, and the 200, and we haven't broken lower quite rapidly. We are actually consolidating under it, and this would be due a bullish indication. So quite mixed signals, as I also mentioned in my latest video on Amazon, Tesla, Apple, and Google. So not too surprising that we are seeing mixed signals on the leading stock indices of America, or especially the USA, of course. So not too surprising in any shape or form. As I mentioned, we are calling between these moving averages, so in my opinion, no trade zone. And this could be actually everything I wanted to talk about. Yeah, the divergence of the RSI, then moving averages, our pennant wheel on the top, or basically our double top on the Dow Jones. It's quite a bit high, but more diverging on the RSI. So on the daily, it's not too diverging actually. So and this is the Nasdaq. And Nasdaq, it's interesting because we actually broke up above our resistance line. It hasn't been too significant, this resistance line, since we only connected two points. So don't be overexcited. But also here we are actually consolidating under this 200 EMA, and we didn't just break lower. So this would be also here be a bullish indication, and also here we are coiling between these moving averages. So and basically just a similar patterns on the Nasdaq than on the other two. So yeah, you can basically apply the moves of the Dow Jones, S&P, and Nasdaq so nothing much different between these three, in my opinion. And